Welcome to Great County Life at Home, and we are here with the adorable Charlie. He's having a good morning, Miss Mary Jane. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Rhonda, and we're so glad to have you back and realize that your voice is a little bit croaky today, so we'll let it rest as much as possible, but you do have some things that you want to talk about first.
Yes, I wanted to give a shout out to Safe and Sound downtown, who helps our homeless individuals here in the community. They held the coldest night of the year event this past weekend, and we were able to raise over $60,000, far exceeding their goal this year, which I believe they did last year as well. Don't know by how much, but it is, to me, a really worthy cause. I don't know if all of our viewers have had a chance to stop in there, but I've donated a few things over the years, and it's a welcoming environment for people who are at risk and homeless and maybe just mental health issues. I think people pop in too. They provide a lot of really good services for people, and it's a non-judgmental environment. So I'm so happy that they've got that much in funds donated to them again this year. It's so important. And with the cold and COVID in this past year, shelter for people during cold breaks, it hasn't been constant. It hasn't been consistent. There's not a lot of options for people out there. And boy, I can't even imagine facing, minus 20-degree weather with nowhere to go. So I'm just really happy about that they've got that much, and we're looking forward to next year, and we'll do the actual walk next year, hopefully. God willing, there's no COVID, and we can actually get together and have the event as it was prior to COVID. That would be really nice. Yeah.
Well, we do know that the COVID restrictions are gradually being lifted, and businesses and offices, everything, but everyone needs to have a safety plan. And I think that we need to be patient, and because eventually things are going to be lifted according to the health guidelines. So all the restrictions are being lifted for the number of folks indoors and outdoors. But some businesses will still perhaps ask you to wear a mask, and some events will ask for your passport, your COVID passport of vaccination. So I think we just need to be patient and to be kind and just be willing to go along with the gradual reopening, because we're going to get there eventually.
We are.
But before we go to break, I just wanted to mention that Rhonda and I are color coordinated today. We are wearing blue, and we're wearing blue, and I'm wearing blue and yellow for a very specific reason. And those are the colors of the Ukrainian flag. And our hearts go out to the terrible devastation that is happening in Ukraine. Innocent people are affected by this. The invasion is intolerable, and support all around the world with countries standing up to and supporting Ukraine and really working against the Russian invasion. Particularly, it's not the Russian people, because they're protesting too. They don't want the war. But the president of that country has just taken this initiative on himself and invaded Ukraine. And we just Rhonda and I wanted to show support for Ukraine.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's devastating. And you think, gee whiz, it's 2022. Have we not learned enough from our history, and have we not grown as a global planet, as a population, enough to know that being a bully is not okay. And I think, you know, we've got to stand up as everybody else around it and stand up against any bullies. And, you know, I guess I've had conversations with people about the idea of jumping on a plane and going there and fighting and being physically there to show support and say, no, we're not okay with this. Being the age that I am and the place that I am in my life, I don't want to do that. I don't know though if I was young if I would, but.
Well, I think there's lots of ways in which we can support the Ukrainian people. They have this really strong spirit. They are not giving up their country. And you're right, it's really important to stand up to bullies. And I think I have seen the coalesce of all the nations, the NATO nations coming together, and even non-NATO nations coming together to stand up to support Ukraine, because we saw this as an invasion unprovoked. And so the world is being united on the front against this. So I think that is important for the Ukrainian people to understand, but also the need for food, shelter, protection, and safety is also important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and being the last 2 years of being stuck with COVID globally, I cannot even imagine the emotional toll on the people of Ukraine. We're just barely getting out of the deep depression, honestly, and upset of these lockdowns and such. And I know personally for my family, we're finally kind of seeing the light and getting happy about being back to school and being able to do things, and having the passports not necessary so much anymore. So yeah, but our hearts definitely go out to the Ukraine. So we will be back after these messages with more Grey County Life at Home with our guest for the week.
This program is brought to you by OHL Action Pack. Looking to see tomorrow's stars today? Follow the teams and players you want to watch. OHL Action Pack is part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
Sometimes, for a wish to come true, it takes a kingdom, because together is stronger. Tied tight, united we stand, in honor of one child's wish, to fuel the fire that will grant many more. Join the kingdom.
Welcome back to Grey County Life at Home with your hosts, Rhonda Brown, Shirley Brown, and Mary Jane Murray. And we have our first guest this week, and this is Carrie Stevenson from the Women's Center here in Owen Sound. And we're going to talk about some new initiatives that are coming, Carrie, from the Women's Center that sound really, really special.
Thank you for having me this morning, Rhonda, Mary Jane.
Well, first of all, we have these great initiatives that the Women's Center is doing this year. But first of all, can you just give us an overview of the services that you offer? We feel that the more we talk about the services that are available at the Women's Center, the more that message is getting out into the community.
For sure. We've seen that as well, especially throughout the pandemic. So the Women's Center has been around for 40 years this year. So we are marking a milestone. We were founded in 1982 as the domestic violence experts, if you will, within the Grey Bruce area. And since that time, we've grown. We serve about 1,500 women through various programs, including counseling, family court support. We have a crisis line, a 24-hour crisis line that's staffed by counselors. We have safety planning. So that's, women might be in a situation where they need some guidance in terms of keeping themselves and their children safe. So we again offer that. And we also have a second stage residential program. So that's a longer term. So there's the emergency shelter, of course, but the second stage program is a longer term housing solution for women and their kids that need up to 1 year of housing. And we also, just as of last year, began it's called Our Place, but it's an anti-human trafficking program for youth aged 12 to 15.
Wow, that's a lot of services. Now, I believe you've been in this in our community since 1982, as you've mentioned. But over the years, the services have expanded. Certainly. And is that through funding and donations?
A portion, yes. So we receive some funding from the government, the Ontario government, but we still depend on community donations. We raise about 20 to 25% of our overall budget from the community. So private donations, corporate donations, foundations, lots of in-kind gifts too. So lots of like toiletries, linens, that sort of thing come in through the door, which we're super appreciative of, especially over the holidays. We get flooded with donations, which is fantastic because not only can we help the women that are staying with us over the Christmas time, but we're also able to use all of those goods throughout the year.
And I think you've done a little bit of renovation to your building too, so that it is more welcoming and open and more of a home-like situation.
Yeah, we started what we call the Adopt a Room campaign. I believe it was 2018. So we're going into our 4th year now. And it's literally adopt a room. So donors can adopt a room, and we've kind of gone through all the bedrooms in the the common living areas, but we're still looking at doing the kitchen and the bathrooms. But donors can adopt a room. They give various amounts depending on sort of what the room and what the project is. And that money then is being used to do the renovation. So replacing flooring, lighting, if it's a bedroom, buying new furniture for the bedroom. We had new furniture donated last year for the living area after we had replaced the flooring and updated the lighting and that. You can imagine that the shelter has a lot of use. So we have about 160 women and children that come through every year. So there's the furniture, if you will, takes a lot of wear and tear. And so more than like a typical household would. So we are, every few years we need to do that. We need to go in there and make some upgrades and repaint and just get it homely again.
Well, I think that's really important because it's very stressful with a family having to come to a women's shelter, sometimes with nothing more than the clothing that they're wearing and that they're bringing children in tow with them. It's almost like a deer in headlights situation. And so the more homier, the more welcoming the situation, it can help to de-escalate the stress, because there's a lot of stress in leaving. And that is the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship, is when the women and children, and it is gender-based violence, so it can happen to men and women, but your center is all about women. So that when women and their children are leaving, that is the most dangerous time in the relationship.
It's true. I don't have statistics in front of me about that, but on any given night in Canada, there's approximately 6,000 women and children who are staying in shelters. And I had mentioned earlier about the safety plans. That's when the safety plans really come into play, is when a woman decides that she was ready to leave, she can call that crisis line and work with our staff to identify sort of the best way, the best practices almost, if you will, to make it safer for her and her child to leave.
Well, I think you have so many services that are going on, but one of the things that the Women's Center of Grey Bruce is noted for is the International Women's Day. And so tell us about that project that is happening this year.
Sure. So it's looking a lot different this year than it did last, and of course before COVID too. Traditionally, we hosted a breakfast and we would have a guest speaker in, and we'd have upwards of about 120 different people that would come in, listen to the speaker. Yeah, there you go. Listen to the speaker, participate in auctions and raffles and things like that. Obviously, COVID played an impact. So our last in-person event was March 2020. Last year's event moved to an online format, and we actually had pretty good success. And I think most of the feedback was really positive, but as an organization, we just couldn't bring ourselves to do another virtual event. We said, you know what, let's hope for better days. And we made the decision to postpone the event to Mother's Day. So it's 8 weeks out, or just over 8 weeks, but we still wanted to mark International Women's Day with something. And so what we decided to do this year was two things, actually. One, we decided to move forward with our auction that we introduced last year online. And that actually just opened yesterday, so March 8th, or March 1st rather, and it will close on International Women's Day. So March 8th at noon. Your viewers can visit our website at thewomencenter.org/auction if they're interested in looking at items. We've had some really great things come in from local businesses, so it's a great way to recognize them as well as supporting the Women's Center at the same time. So the first, again, being the auction. The second thing we're doing to recognize International Women's Day is what we're calling Women Wednesdays. So there are 8 Wednesdays between International Women's Day and Mother's Day, and on each of those Wednesdays, we're hoping to showcase one woman who's played an impact on the gender-based violence sector locally. So we have our first person coming up. I'm not going to release too many details about it. You'll have to wait until next Wednesday. But we do have our first person that was pretty pivotal in developing the Women's Center 40 years ago. So what we'll be doing is featuring a bio, if you will, a biography of each of the 8 different women who, again, have played an impact on each of those Wednesdays. So starting next week, people can watch our social channels, so Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, or they can visit our website as well and learn a little bit about history and the Women's Center, as well as sort of modern day happenings and women that have played a factor in the sector.
Wow.
Well, there's 2 things. One is, are you still taking biographies of women to be featured in those 8 weeks?
Absolutely. We do have, so there are 8 weeks. We have received some nominations. We do still have a few openings though. So if you're interested in nominating somebody, you can visit our website, and there's a quick form to fill out. It doesn't take longer than 5 minutes. And then we do all the legwork on our end to get more information and approvals and things like that.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention is this program will air starting on Monday.
Okay.
So I knew that the online auction was starting March the 1st to March the 8th. So what Rhonda and I did a couple of weeks ago was we did an update in our introduction to make sure that people knew that the online auction was coming up, and to bookmark that so that they could participate.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Well, we want to support the Women's Center, and I just have to tell you, the last gathering that I did was at the International Women's Day 2020.
The olden days, right? That's what we call them.
And I, we got to wear real clothes. We got to wear, to hug people and to spend that breakfast meeting, catching up with everybody we possibly could, and didn't know that that would be the last time.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to spend it with us. We're very hopeful that come Mother's Day, there will be fewer restrictions and just a safer environment overall. We haven't firmed up the plans. We don't know if we're going to do an outdoor event or an indoor. We're hoping for indoor just because it's a little bit more predictable with weather, but I'm not sure how safe people will feel at that point. It's so hard to know. So we're keeping it pretty open, and we'll be releasing details about that event as the date draws nearer.
Well, one of the things that Rhonda and I were talking about in our opening is that with the gradual lifting of restrictions, some people are going to feel more comfortable wearing a mask, even though the restrictions are lifted. Some events are still going to require your proof of vaccine,
right?
Your QR code, and that we just need to be patient and respectful of what choices are being made individually or with the event or with the businesses.
Absolutely.
Carrie, can I ask, during COVID, are you finding that you've had to turn away women who were in a crisis situation or needed housing, needed to get out of a situation?
So we try really hard never to turn anyone away. Demand has sort of ebbed and flowed throughout the pandemic. Early on, things were pretty quiet, and that's because women were at home with their abusers often and not able to make a phone call and not able to get to where they needed to be safer. And there was also a lot of concern early in the days because we didn't know how deadly this virus might be. And so people were hesitant to sort of spend time in a congregate care setting like that. As the pandemic sort of went on and as restrictions rather were lifted or put back in place, we kind of saw ups and downs in terms of numbers. Our operations have definitely changed over the last 2 years. Again, early on, we had hotel rooms booked so that we could quarantine women for 2 weeks at a time, and then they would move into the shelter and everybody was still segregated, though. We actually ended up buying TVs for each of the bedrooms so that, because we couldn't use the common areas. Yeah. So every woman had a TV. We ended up getting internet in there, like Wi-Fi for the clients to use, because they were like trapped in a room, really. I don't want to use the word trap, but limited to their rooms. But obviously things have opened up a little bit more. So we, one of the things we did too throughout the course of the pandemic was hire a temporary cook, because in the past women were able to go into the kitchen and make group meals, but the kitchen's a pretty small space and physical distancing is really difficult. And again, early on, we didn't really know what we were dealing with. So we were able to get a grant from the government to be able to hire this temporary cook who now takes care of lunches and dinners and the women can just sort of help themselves to breakfast as needed. But again, keeping physical distancing in mind, it's been very helpful actually, because we've tried all sorts of things in the kitchen. We were doing takeout, but that's not sustainable or very healthy. We were doing frozen meals, same issue. We tried to staggered schedule, but that was difficult because it was conflicting with all sorts of things. But yeah, this is the cook now has been in place for just over a year and it's been wonderful. And then also the frontline staff at one point were cooking. And then that meant they were spending less time doing the counseling portions of the job. So certainly things have changed. And, to say that we've had a consistent rise or decrease, I can't, because it really has gone up and down. But what we see is as restrictions lift, that's when we see that big influx of clients. And then if things lock down again, it gets a little bit quieter. And then they lift again, and then we get more women. So it totally depends. Now, our crisis calls on the most part have been up throughout the pandemic again, not early on, but sort of, later on. And we also actually, I should mention, we introduced a text support line as well during the pandemic. And we've had a lot of calls or texts, I should say, come in that way too, because it's a little bit more discreet. It's easier to send a text than it is to call somebody if your partner is there and he is abusive. So.
Well, I understand that there's a hand code that can be used.
Yeah, the Canadian Women's Foundation, I believe, started this, and I don't. It's not my thing, but I believe it's an open hand, thumb in, fingers down. Yeah. And if you see that, that's a signal that a woman is in crisis and needs your help. And so I think the best advice at that point would be to call 911 and give your location and the circumstances so that police or professionals can intervene and help.
Yes, because so much was being done over social media and Zoom and Skype and that sort of thing. And so I thought that a hand code was particularly discreet. Mm-hmm. If you need, but I also need that if you can call 911 and order a pizza and a code.
I haven't heard that one myself, actually, so that's good to know though too.
Well, I've seen it on commercials. I don't know whether that is being applied here in Ontario. So that because when you order a pizza, you give your address. Right. You can say yes or no to the questions that are being asked and that sort of thing. And that was another safety device in supporting women who were trying to send discreet messages. But I just want to commend the Women's Center for all the pivoting that you've had to do over the past 2 years. And that just really speaks to the commitment, and how you support women within our community, not only through the women's shelter, but the expanded services, and of course, bringing in International Women's Day as well. And the work that you do, we really hope that the community will support your fundraising initiatives, because it is such a critical service for us to have in our community.
Well, thank you. And it's true. I mean, all the credit goes to the frontline staff, the women that are in there working with our clients. And we've got staff that have been here for nearly 30 years. So they've really seen the evolution, but especially during, like you said, the pivoting that we've had to do over the last couple of years with the pandemic. So, and the community's been fantastic. So much support over the last couple of years.
Well, I think with the pivoting, it's also had a financial toll as well, because in order to purchase the additional services like the TVs and the Wi-Fi and the texting options as well, all of that costs money. So you did get some money from the government, but it still is dependent on the donations that are given from the community to the Women's Center.
You're right. And like I said, it's approximately 20 to 25% of our operating budget that we raise in the community. So, and yes, we've definitely had increased expenses during COVID, and then decreased fundraising opportunities because we haven't been able to meet in person and host events and things like that. So, I mean, it's a struggle that all charities are facing, definitely.
For sure.
Most definitely. And I would take it, do you use volunteers?
We do. We've been somewhat limited again during COVID. We haven't been able to have volunteers into the shelter, but pre-COVID, in the olden days, again, we had volunteers that would help with childcare. So they could come in, hang out with the kids while the moms were in group counseling or individual sessions and things like that. We have still been using our volunteers for drivers and grocery shopping. So a combination rather of volunteers and staff do those particular duties. But yeah, we have been pretty limited with what we can do with volunteers, just because we're trying to limit how many people are inside the shelter, just again for physical distancing. We're hopeful that, as restrictions lift and as things kind of level out in terms of cases, that we'll be able to open the volunteer program up. But at this point, we don't have a firm date as to when that will happen.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today, Carrie, and giving us an update with what's happening with the Women's Center of Grey Bruce and the initiatives. And we hope to see more of you and some updates on those women.
My Uncle Cheney was one of over 150,000 Indigenous children that were taken to residential schools between the 1800s and 1996. My uncle ran away from school wanting to get home to his mom and dad, and sadly he didn't make it and died of exposure. When Gord Downey found out about my late Uncle Cheney's story, he wrote Secret Path, a series of poems that became an album, then a graphic novel, a documentary, and a concert. Gord met my family, and together we formed the Gord Downey and Cheney Winjack Fund. Together we are sharing Secret Path and other reconciliation resources with legacy schools, setting up legacy spaces across Canada, and hosting events like Secret Path Week to inspire all Canadians to engage in reconciliation. Before he left us, Gord asked us all to do something.
You're gonna figure it out.
Will you join us? Together we can make Canada a better place.
Hello everyone, your host Antoine Lahashim here on the couch, and welcome to season 8. Yay! 8 seasons, and we've got a lot of awesome guests coming up, so keep watching.
Hi, I'm Gavin Bryant, centerman with the Owen Sound Attack. Catch great OHL action on Rogers TV as we bring you Owen Sound Attack games live both home and away.
Welcome back to Grey County Life at Home. We are featuring once again the services at the YMCA because they're an anchor in our community, and there's always something going on to meet the needs of our community citizens. And it's always my pleasure to bring the folks from the YMCA onto our show because of all the really good things that they are doing to support the health and well-being of our community. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Matt Shute from Community Initiatives and Employment, and Carrie Saunders-Willis, who is with the Health and Fitness and Aquatic section of the YMCA. And once again, I mean, viewers know my affiliation with an endearment to the YMCA because of my history and the history of my children being engaged in the Y and growing up to be such wonderful, wonderful kids. So welcome, Matt, and thank you so much for taking the time today. And tell us about the community initiatives, your role, and the community initiatives and employment services.
Well, thanks for that intro. Always great to be here, Mary Jane. Community initiatives and employment is, I guess, the community service arm of the YMCA. Pardon me. We have sites both at the Sydenham campus in Owen Sound, downtown Owen Sound at the professional building, and of course in Hanover at our Hanover office site. Within community initiatives, it's probably easiest if we just think of it in, I guess, two pillars in terms of employment services and then the community initiative sides. And those programs include 18, soon to be 19 separate programs, really targeted at improving the social determinants of health for people, increasing equitable access to other services that are out there, as well as providing emergency shelter services through our housing program. My role with all of this is to empower all of our great staff with community initiatives and employment to do the great work that they do. They're really the experts, and my job is to make sure that they have what they need to get their jobs done. Carrie is the manager of HR, so if I was wrong there, she could chime in and let me know.
No, you did a great job.
I think just quickly to cover community initiatives, you're looking at programs related to emergency shelter support, programs are related to offsetting the rising costs of the rental market, the rising costs of utilities. We have settlement and language services. So settlement workers within our communities, settlement workers within both school boards, so that we're working with the entire family, workplace language instructors, and workplace placement instructors, so that language in and of itself isn't a barrier to employment for newcomers to the area. And then a whole host of youth justice and youth in transition programs also. And that's sort of the bulk of programming that makes up community initiatives. And then quickly on the employment side, we're looking at things like, again, Youth Job Connection, which is a critical program to bridging youth into meaningful employment with an exceptionally high retention rate of over 95%. And then employment services really is geared toward the individual who's looking for employment, but it doesn't stop there. It also we have several programs that assist the actual employers. So if you run a 5-person business or you run a 1,500-person operation and you don't have any staff and you really need some staff, we have programs that incentivize individuals making that transition to a particular work site, getting the training that they need ahead of time, equipment that they need ahead of time, and making sure that it's a good match as they meet with employment advisors and job developers. So the employment services really does a fantastic job at sort of meeting that full spectrum.
Well, I know that employment has been a challenge over the past 2 years with the pandemic because not everyone can work from home. And there was a lot of service jobs that required people to be on deck in the building. And it was a really difficult time for our community. And we saw so many people who were in financial distress because of the lack of income or the change in their income. So I noticed today that there was a posting on Facebook that indicated that we had 200 jobs available, or perhaps even more, in our community. And so what is that telling you about where we are right now?
Well, it's actually, so that's about 200 jobs. There's, I think, 215 jobs on our job board. I think if we looked across Grey County as a whole, we'd be approaching 1,500 open positions, not just in the service industry, but supervisory and management positions across all sectors. Skills and trades continue to be a challenge in terms of vacancies that exist, slowing down production. So when people are looking for employment, there are opportunities right across the board.
Have you noticed a difference in what employees are expecting from their employers now?
I think to meet some of the demand of all of the vacancies that we've just spoken about, one of the trends is employers becoming, I would say, more flexible with what they're willing to offer in terms of schedules that are going to accommodate, a single parent that is raising kids that are getting off a school bus at 3:15. Really trying to look at, the labor force that they have in their own operation and trying to make the most of that. And certainly that's something that we encourage employers to take a really creative look at, because this is a new challenge, and so we need some new solutions to meet that need.
Matt, the question that gets raised in my mind is, are these jobs new positions, or are these positions that either people quit or couldn't come into work because they weren't vaccinated, or, for some reason the position is now open? It's not a new job. It's just trying to replace somebody.
Yeah, I haven't heard of a lot of instances whereby vaccination has really played into the context of it. The food service industry was particularly hard hit. And so a lot of those businesses did have to lay individuals off because there wasn't anybody coming into the establishments. And so moving back into those opportunities, there's a lot of availability in that particular market. But again, this spans across employers. So at the YMCA, we have open positions working for the YMCA in professional capacities that we've had open for quite a while, because we can't fill them. There is more opportunity now to work at home online. That sometimes plays into whether a person decides, yes, I'd like to go out and work face-to-face again. They did talk at various points throughout the pandemic, referring to that time period also as the Great Resignation. And so I think a lot of people did do a bit of an about face and think, how do I want to be spending my time? And so we saw a higher than normal turnover rate as well. The other piece that I can't skip over is that if the cost of living is increasing at a rate that is exceeding what somebody's going to be able to make at different employment opportunities, then accepting that job becomes pretty difficult because you're going to need 3 or 4 of those jobs. And that's where a lot of local employers have really tried to meet the need and try to bridge some of that cost. But in reality, we're still looking at one-bedroom apartments that are costing $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, lack of affordable housing across the board. And I think to purchase a home, if that was on somebody's radar, the average price in Grey County, I think right now is $750,000 or something. And then you start to look at day-to-day costs, like the cost of gasoline and the rising cost of groceries. So it's never as simple as, well, there's an opening, I'll take it. There needs to be a lot of other resources in place to make that match work. And that's why a lot of people end up coming down to the YMCA to meet with a job developer and employment advisor to try to identify some of those potential barriers and then try to move forward with solutions around that.
Matt, is there a central phone number if someone was wanting to get in touch with the employment offices? Because you did mention several locations. So is there a central number to call and then they could be directed to whatever site is most appropriate?
Yeah, the central number would be 519-371-9222.
Because in this case, what I'm hearing from you is that when a job posting is coming up, it's not just necessarily the job posting, but it's balancing out what the hours, what the wages are going to be, as well as what the individual's living expenses are going to be, and seeing how that can be matched, a better match, so that it's a win for the employer with stability and retention, and a winner for the employee who is now going to be able to build a stable life.
Yeah, it's a giant balancing act for sure. I think to look at the other side from an employer perspective, we did have a giant sector in long-term care really struggling to fill all of the required positions in long-term care over the course of a pandemic, because you've got a large group of staff that have continually come in face-to-face with folks every day. And I think it was a really hard push. So naturally, over the course of an enduring pandemic, those positions become harder to fill. So in partnership with Georgian College, as an example, and our long-term care partners, we trained over 100 individuals to become essential supportive care workers. So whether it was in food services and long-term care, or providing some assistance with PSWs, we moved over 100 people from not working into providing an incredibly valued service. And a lot of those individuals have gone on to start their coursework to become a PSW and have been retained by the long-term care facility. So it's just a good example of what we can achieve when we look to achieve things through partnership.
Well, it's not only is the Y Employment Services and Community Initiatives been pretty busy over the years, this past 2 years has really presented a lot of challenges for you as well. And what we see is the way in which organizations can pivot to try and meet those challenges. That's pretty amazing, Matt. I really appreciate that update. But I'm not sure. I'm checking with Rhonda for the moment. Is this a good time to bring in Carrie? She's been waiting very patiently.
3.5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Well, Matt, you've taken up a lot of time. I'm so glad that we have extra time for Carrie today. So welcome, Carrie, and thank you for being so patient as Matt went through all the initiatives. So Carrie, you're with the health and fitness and aquatic side of the YMCA, and that's the huge Julie MacArthur building that we've got up there. How has the pandemic and the easing of restrictions what effect has that had on the building?
Well, actually, it actually has had a good effect on the building, I'm happy to say. As everybody knows, the pandemic has been very difficult and challenging, particularly from our Health, Fitness, and Aquatic Center, because we were temporarily closed and reopened 4 times during the pandemic. So that was really hard on our staff. So with the easing of the COVID requirements, particularly the vaccination passports, we have seen an uptick in our membership, which is great. So we're super excited to welcome back those members that either opted to or were unable to receive the vaccination. We were able to accommodate those individuals through online fitness classes, which was great. But we're super excited to welcome them back. So despite the fact that the COVID vaccination passport is no longer required, we still are maintaining our masking requirements, as well as our physical distancing and our cleaning protocols. So anybody that is participating in a physical activity where there's other people within the facility that they may not be able to maintain consistent physical distancing, they are required to still mask in those types of activities. So for example, we have a great hoop shoot around where the teens like to come in. At this point in time, masking is still required because physical distancing isn't always maintained when they're playing. Pickleball, badminton, so sort of group activities. When you're working out on your own, you are more than welcome to take off your mask because we do have the stations and the fitness stations set up so that physical distancing can be maintained.
Once again, you're working very hard. So what about your swimming programs?
Yes.
Your aquatic programs, because you're in the water, you can't wear a mask.
No, so we did actually redesign those. So some of the programs that required support, so physical support in the water for some of those that are just learning to swim, we actually welcomed parents into the classes and our instructors instructed on deck. So that was great. And we did have personal protective equipment for instructors if they were in the water. So for example, face shields. And we did actually purchase in the event a rescue was required at the initial stages, breathable masks for our lifeguarding staff.
Oh, wow.
So, and
Carrie,
they were trained, yes.
Carrie, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to cut to commercial, but we will be back with more from Carrie Saunders-Willis.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
I did it. I need it.
The hero gave it.
And I am alive.
As an organ donor, you can save up to 8 lives and enhance the lives of 75 others. Please go to our website. Pledge a gift of life. You'll be glad you did.
Summer days, summer nights, lots of things to do, places to go, and people to see. If you're having a few drinks, be sure to plan ahead and get home safely. We don't want to pick you up. Drinking drivers risk injuries to themselves and others and take chances with their license, their jobs, and their future. Remember what's at stake and choose your ride, whether you're the driver, the passenger, or the party host. Thanks for supporting sober driving. I hope we never meet.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Don't forget to tune in to Grey County Life at Home next week.
We'll be talking with the Downhill Band, a Juno Award winner. And welcome back to Grey County Life at Home. And we're continuing our conversation with Carrie Saunders-Willis. And she's obviously from the Y, because we're carrying on with the great services that the Y provides. and she is with the Health, Fitness, and Aquatics. And we were just talking about the aquatics side and some of the programs that are being continued and offered, even though we go into the pandemic restrictions and some of the lifting of the restrictions. So welcome back, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you were talking about the swimming, and I am interested in that. You know, people don't realize how nice it is to get in a warm pool. And at this time of the year, it's fantastic. So you actually do have programs running right now.
We do have programs running. We have swim lessons running. We do have family fun. So if families want to come in and have a splash around in our warm pool, we also have our aquatics programming. So aquafit classes are running. We're happy to have our Owen Sound Aquatics Club coming in and using the pool, as well as our Special Olympics Otter Swim Club coming in to use the pool. So we've got lots going on. It feels so great, so great to have people back in the facility. So yeah, we've just modified our programming to support what we needed to with COVID. Same with our fitness programs. We've got classes running. Most of the programs, we are still requesting that people register just in order for us to help maintain capacity limits. So even though the government has said capacity limits are waived, we still need to ensure that physical distancing is maintained for the time being until we hear differently from public health and from our provincial mandates. So we're trying very, very hard, and we have, touch wood, provided a very, very safe and healthy environment for people that need to come back. And, our why, as I'm sure you know, Mary Jane and Rhonda, our why is just so much more than just a fitness facility. It is a social community. I can't tell you how happy I was when I came in after our most recent shutdown and I saw all of our aquafit participants waiting in the lounge area. And I just said to them, oh my gosh, it is so great to see you. You see people out and about in the grocery store, and you can still kind of tell who they are with their masks on, but it's much different when you walk into a place that already feels like home, and then you see the people that you're accustomed to seeing every day. So we did, when we did have the shutdown, we did continue on with some of our partners. So we have a wonderful partnership with the Grey Bruce Health Services team, and we offer cardiac rehabilitation, and our Y staff are phenomenal. So despite the fact that the facility was closed, we were still able to support that program, which provided individuals in the cardiac rehabilitation program with a very safe environment to continue their journey and working towards their recovery. So that's a great partnership that we have. We've continued on. We're starting up our Rock Steady boxing program, which is in partnership with the Parkinson's Society. And we are looking at a number of new partnerships. We haven't signed on the dotted line yet, so I'm not ready to say what they are, but they are very, very exciting, and they are preventative, and they are all about health and well-being. And again, it's not, physical activity is so important to everybody's overall health, including mental health. And for a lot of people that were stuck at home and either didn't have access to the internet or weren't able to get out due to mobility issues, having the Y back open and being able to attend classes is just so good to everybody's overall health. And yeah, it's wonderful, particularly if there's people out there that are living on their own. It just feels so great. So we are hoping to boost some of our partnerships. We are looking to increase our programming, particularly for youth. Patty Pawlowski is our supervisor of youth, and she is fabulous. Everybody seems to know Patty. So she's busy working on March break camps and gearing up for summer day camp. So those spaces are filling up very, very quickly. So we're looking forward to having a somewhat more normalized year. And also our Camp Presqu'île that we are in partnership with the Rotary Club is opening up this year. So we're busy gearing up for that. And we are also expanding spaces. So our childcare centers are also offering day camp opportunities as well. So a little bit different. So the camp that's being run here at the HFA is recreational, and that is being led by Patty and her team, and they put on a great program. So we're busy. We're getting busy again, and we have seen an uptick again in our membership. So we're not where we were pre-pandemic, but we're hoping to get there. And again, it has to do with people's comfort level.
Now, we do have March break coming up just in a few days, actually. And so I'm wondering, are you offering any March break programs?
We are offering March break camp. So we are taking registrations through Camp Brain, and people are more than welcome to come to our customer service desk as well. So the March break camp will be held here at the Health, Fitness and Aquatic Center. Some of our programming will be adjusted in order to accommodate our school kids that are coming from March break camp. So people are encouraged to check out our schedule and make sure that the program that they want to participate is in fact running and hasn't been rescheduled due to the March break camp.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So one of the features that the Y has offered in the past, and I'm not sure whether this is applicable going forward, is that every once in a while you would have a free open day for the community. No membership required, but everyone was welcome to just come and test out the facility. And that was one of the programs that I particularly liked, because it opened it up to everyone, regardless of their financial or location or situation.
Absolutely. And we will be running a partnership day, and you can look forward to seeing some promotion for that as well. We are also running promotions. So if people do want to try the Y at no cost, we will be having some promotions run where people can try, and we do offer a wonderful subsidy program. So if people do have difficulty, we don't turn anybody away due to financial reasons. So everybody is more than welcome.
Well, that's what I like so much about the Y.
Yes. Yep. Finances will never be a barrier here.
And that's fantastic. It's a great resource in our community. And I got to say, I think it was 15 years ago that I probably met Patty with my little people. And yeah, just an amazing group of people at our Family Y, really supportive. So thanks so much for coming on today, Matt and Carrie, for giving us an update on what the services are and what's happening at our Family Y. And we wish you the best of luck going forward with the reduction in restrictions and all that business. Thanks so much. And we'll see everybody next week on Great County Life at Home. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
We can be hurt. We can be bruised. We can be broken. Slowed down. Confused, and even numbed. But we can't be defeated. We're built on a foundation that's strong, our mission unwavering, and together we'll beat as one.
My husband is a wonderful man and a great father when he's not drinking. I'm so angry he chooses alcohol over us. If he really loved us,